another Vibrant Music Teacher chat. It is so wonderful to be back with you again. I'm delighted to be here. And today we are talking about planning, which is just the most exciting subject of all, don't you think? Don't you think so? No? I genuinely think it is. I think planning can be fun. It can teach us so much as teachers if we do it right. And I'm so excited to dive into this topic with you. Okay, welcome everyone. It is great to be back with you. So I have Carrie in the chat, and Charlotte, and Joel, and Eloise, and Helga, and Adriana, and Kathy, and Elizabeth, and Alice. But there's more people than that watching. So, hello to everyone who's already chimed in. But if you haven't yet, please say hi to us. We will not bite. We never bite here at VMT or Colourful Keys, ever, do we? We're biteless flamingos. So please do say hi to us. Hey, Kurt and Lee, great to see you here. Oh my gosh, Sarah. Oh my gosh, this is so cool. So it's awesome to have all of you here. And I am feeling pretty revitalized. I don't know if you can tell. I'm always bubbling with energy when I do these chats because they're so much fun and it's a great opportunity to hang out with all of you. But I've been off for the past week or 5 days. It feels like way longer. It's incredible. And I managed to travel a little bit within Ireland, obviously. But I managed to travel and I did some hiking and I did some sitting and reading and it was so good. So if you haven't taken any time off this summer, go back and check out last week's video on work-life balance and then take some time off, okay? Was that scary and serious enough for you? I hope so. Hooray for a break! I agree, Carrie. Hear, hear. Hooray for breaks. So I now have 2 weeks to get ready for the most planning necessary, planning impossible year ever. That should be its official title this academic year. Planning necessary, planning impossible. Mission planning impossible. That doesn't work. Anyway, so I'm totally in planning mode, full steam ahead. Have to get ready for next year. I'm going back to teaching in person in a certain fashion with lots of precautions in place, obviously, and with the online option there for those who want to take it. Looks like it's going to be about 80% in person, so I have a lot of prep to do, and I've a lot of regular teaching planning to do, right? I still have to plan my lessons in the normal way, as well as planning all the hand sanitizer and cleaning breaks and how people can use the bathroom, because you can't stop little kids from using a bathroom. As well as all of that, I have to actually plan my lessons. And today is going to be about the regular lesson planning stuff. But if you do have questions about online stuff or in-person lessons, if that's you right now, COVID panics, any of those types of questions are welcome as well as regular planning stuff, because I know this is an area that a lot of teachers want to get better at, and we're going to be exploring a lot of that today. So just to give you a sense of how today's video is going to run, those of you who haven't joined us before, first of all, you're super welcome. I didn't say hi to all the newbies. Hi. Please do say hi to us. The way these chats work is we dive into a specific topic. Today it's planning. Last week it was work-life balance. Next week it's going to be creativity. So we dive into a specific topic, but we also have a bit of a chat. That's why it's called a chat. So I welcome off-topic stuff in the chat there, in the comments. Let me know if you have questions that are off-topic. That's fine. If you have planning specific stuff, that's great too. I have a bit of a discussion prepared and some different areas we can look at around planning. And then after that, we do some website reviews. So today we're going to be looking at flautino.co.uk and missallison.com, which is going to be fun. So we do that towards the end. First, we have our planning discussion. Before any of that, though, I want to let you know that there's a webinar on tomorrow. So if you like this chat, you're going to love the webinar. It's a bit more structured, bit of a different format if you're used to the chats here. But, you know, it's commenting and chatting with me as well alongside that. So that is going to be on tomorrow, 2 hours later than this. Okay, so whenever this is for you, it's 2 hours later than that. The simplest thing, if you want to sign up and you're not on my email list already, just go to colourfulkeys.com, go to our blog, and there will be a scroll mat, a thing that slides down that says, hey, come to the webinar. It's totally free. You just need to sign up there so that we can send you the link when we go live. Okay, that is going to be about creating reading rock stars. So it's going to be about reading skills, and it's going to take you through my system of teaching reading and why I teach things in the order I do and how I do that. So it's going to be a big overview of reading. And it's partially to celebrate our new course, which is interval immersion. So members can check that out shortly, and that'll be in the video library. And that is a way to have an interval blast with students that need it. So blast in the fun sense and also blast in the fast sense, because we're going to be blasting through intervals. So that's going to be great. I think where it's going to come in most useful for me, because I do use my own lesson plans and my own courses and go through them, because it provides that great structure. Where it's going to be super useful for me is with transfer students, because I do this interval stuff a bit more gradually than that course in general, but with the transfer students I need to blast them through it, so it's going to be great for that. Let's check in with you guys. Yeah, Faye, you always take August off. Love that. Elena, great to see you here. Planning is the hardest for me. Monday is also the perfect day to talk about planning. Yes, I didn't mention. Thank you, Elena, for reminding me. These chats, you may have been familiar with them being on Wednesdays. They are now on Mondays. We've been on Mondays for a couple of weeks already, but in case you weren't aware, this is our new time. We're sticking with this for the time being. This is already in my teaching schedule alongside all the lessons I've scheduled you guys in too. So you're slotted in there, and it should be good for the whole year. So you can make this time each week, and it's particularly good for those of you over in the US and Canada, because it's nice and early, but not too early in the morning, right? So it's a good time slot for you guys, and you can just about make it, as Eloise showed us. If you're over in Asia, late in the evening, you can just about make it in, say, Perth in Australia, but I don't expect you to stay up if you're in Melbourne or Sydney or over that side. So Lee is with Elena, that's awesome. And Lynn would love to hear your best tips for planning quickly but still have it be great. That's the trick, isn't it, Lynn? Hate it when I get busy and feel like I'm winging it for part of the lessons. Yeah, for sure. Charlotte says, choosing repertoire is a huge time sucker for me. Any tips on streamlining the process? Choosing repertoire specifically. Can we come back to that? I'm going to try and remember it for later, Charlotte, but shout at me through the comments if I don't remember, because I think we should go through the general planning first and then we'll get back to the repertoire area specifically. Oh, nice, Cindy. Getting your kids started in online school. That's great. And Annika, Mondays suit you, which I love. And Liz just joined us from Wales. Welcome, Liz. Okay, so let's dive into planning, shall we? The first thing I want to say about planning is that there's no correct way to do it. Okay? As with most stuff, there isn't a right way. That's the truth. And if you came here hoping I was going to say, okay, do this and then do that and then you're done, check. No, it's not going to happen. Okay? Because there's no one right way to do it. And that's actually a good thing. So many times I see comments from teachers and stuff in Facebook groups around the place, and they're saying, oh, what's your best way to plan? I need to find the best system. I keep trying different things and nothing works for me. The truth is there is no one best way, even for one person. And that's a good thing, because we can actually learn from every planning system. Every different way that I have tried planning my lessons, especially as a new teacher, every different way I tried, I learned a ton. I learned so much from that system. And it's not that I learned that it was wrong for me and then I moved on. It's that I actually gleaned something from going through that system. So if you are someone that switches really, really often between planning systems, I want to encourage you to stick with one for a little while, because I believe you can learn a lot by doing that. If you're someone who does things one very rigid specific way and you haven't tried many others, I want to encourage you to try some other stuff, because it does change your perspective on how you teach and everything you do. Right? It makes a big difference. Hit me up in the comments. Let me know if you've tried a bunch of different ways and some of the different ways you've tried of planning, and what you think you learned from the ways that you've abandoned. That would be really interesting to read. You can change your planning process, and you should. You should change it periodically, especially in those early days, but even as a more experienced teacher, trying something new or just a new tweak to how you do things will make an enormous difference to your perspective. In fact, right now I'm trying something a bit different, which I'm going to tell you about later. And it is helping me see things differently, and just little tweaks like that can make a difference. You'll learn so much from the process. So what are the different approaches to planning? I want to talk broadly about how different people plan in terms of the approach, so the method, not the tools, and then we'll get to tools later, okay? So first of all, the approach. There's 4 different ways I'm going to look at. The first is time estimate based. The second is goal based. The third is category based. And the fourth is a slant on Paul Harris's simultaneous learning. Even if you don't know what that is, you might be doing something like that. So I'd love to hear as I go through these, if one of them sounds familiar, if one of them sounds like, oh, I've never tried that way, let me know. So time estimate based is how I do my group workshops generally. I find it works very well for group workshops, and I have done it for lessons too. And actually I did that more in the beginning stages of my teaching, and that's one of those things where, yes, I moved on from it, but I don't believe I moved on from it because I learned it was wrong. I may have even thought that at the time, like, oh, this isn't working. But actually, the truth is I moved on from it because I had learned and embedded how long things take and gotten so good at estimating the time that I didn't need to structure it that way. But a time estimate based plan is where, for my group workshops, I do this in a Google Sheet. So I literally have on one column, it says 5 minutes, 10 minutes, so it's going forward in time. And then the next column, I put in the things and how long they last. I like to do things in 5-minute increments along the side, and I actually like to do it with the hour showing. So I have it go 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 5-minute increments, and then the next column I will put the actual time I'm going to start the group workshop. So 10:30, 10:35, 10:40, 10:45, and it's going forward like that. And that way I can actually see what time it's going to be when we do each task. So the 5-minute increments are because nothing in a group workshop really takes me less time than 5 minutes. So the intro is, some game, and that takes 5 minutes. And then the next activity could be a big group improvisation. Not right now, but in the time when I had 10 students in a room, it was a group improv. And that takes 15 minutes, so that takes 3 of those chunks. Now, there's different ways you can visualize this. This works for me in a Google Sheet. And that's still the way I do my group workshops, as I said. So that works extremely well for that situation, and I believe for beginner teachers especially, to plan their regular lesson time. And you can go in 1-minute increments to really narrow in on how long you spend on each thing, because that is important. It does matter. We have to time manage carefully in our lessons. The next approach is goal-based. So this is that you have specific goals with a student, perhaps ones that you've set with them, and you're planning based on working towards those goals. This is a little bit wishy-washier, but it's also important to do, and I believe most useful for older students. Particularly I tend to use this sort of method with teens. So this is where they have a plan, they have a goal, they want to sit this exam, or they want to record these videos for a playlist, or whatever they want to do, or just learn a piece, right? Memorize it. And then we step back away from that goal and say, okay, well, that means that our micro goal, our target for this week is going to be this, and this week is going to be that, in order to arrive at that thing in the time frame we want to or need to, if it's an exam with a deadline. I involve my students in that, so that's something I do during lessons with them, because I want them to get good at planning that out. And I mean, it's a life skill, isn't it? It's something enormous that they can learn from piano that's going to benefit them so much, especially as they go into higher education, where they really have to plan out long-term assignments. The next method is categories. So this is something where you decide, okay, every lesson isn't going to include these categories. It's going to include old pieces, new pieces, sight reading, some creative element, right? And you leave that open, scales, whatever. And then you just fill in those categories into your lesson plan each week. So you keep some of them vague if they're things that you need to rotate out. And you keep some of them quite specific if they're things you always do every single week. You're going to have to be broad with some of them in order to fit everything in. So I said creative stuff there, right? So that's going to need to alternate. If you've limited lesson time, we all do. It's going to be improv some weeks. It's going to be composing some weeks. It's going to be a lead sheet some weeks, right? So those categories can again give you a different perspective on things. The next one, the last one, is some slant on a simultaneous learning approach. So that's a Paul Harris term. His books are fantastic, highly recommend them, but it's not exclusive to him. The idea really of this category, which I'm calling after his term because I think it's a useful way to look at it, is really that everything comes out of a piece. So you take a piece your student is going to learn, and the scale comes from that, and the improv comes from that, and the theory comes from that. And you can look at Paul Harris's work to see this in action and see examples of it in his books. But you can also apply this in other areas and in ways that he doesn't, where you're taking a piece and using that, branching out away from that. So rather than putting the pieces into the categories, you're taking the piece and bringing everything out from there. This needs to be structured carefully in terms of what pieces you choose, because if you do this for everything and all the pieces are in C major, your student never learns any other scales, right? So you do have to be careful and think about it that way, but it's definitely a useful way to looking at things, and something that I think all teachers should try sometimes. Teresa, great to see you here. My planning changes overall for myself, but also according to my students' goals, for sure. And then Liz, I find having so many different ages and levels very hard to keep up with the planning point of view. Yeah, each student doesn't take me that long week by week, and I am considering each student individually. So while I have certain components of my lesson, Liz, that I try to group people. So if I have, there was the portion of my online lessons where I was doing surprise starter or the composing. That worked across my whole studio. Maybe I have other things that are in common across all my 6 to 10-year-olds. But most of the time I am going student by student. And I think if we really hone in on that process that we're going through with each student, it can be streamlined and it can be manageable, even with a large student load. I have generally over 30 students myself, and I do all the planning alongside with my teachers who work with me as well. So I'm basically planning for 50 plus students a week. And it is manageable if you have a streamlined process that you can land on, but just don't expect it to never change, like I say. Okay, so those are the approaches. Then I want to talk about tools next, right? And then we'll talk about weekly processes, and then the more infrequent processes that go alongside those. And that's more based on what I use. So tools. What do we actually do the lesson planning with? Few options for you. You could use just a divided up notebook, or a folder, same thing. So you have a folder and you have the student tabs alongside just the student names, and you just flip to that student and plan for them, and you just write it down. So the advantage of this is you've no technology to deal with. You can do it sitting on the couch with your notebook. That's nice. And it can be handy, and you can have it in lessons, and it seems like a simple system. The disadvantage is it's harder to look stuff up. If you don't have your notebook, you have no way of accessing it. Whereas if you use a digital system, you can look it up across various devices. And so in general, I don't suggest this just because it's more difficult to edit and hard to look stuff up. But if you're someone who really prefers to go analog to get off the screens, I totally get that. And a divided notebook can work just fine. Another option is post-it notes on folders. I use this for some elements of my planning if there's something particular I want to remember. I have student folders. They've been lying idle for so long, they're going to go back into action soon. But my student folders are where I put assignment sheets for my student for that week. So I make my assignment sheets before the lesson, and we'll talk about that more in a second. But as I do that, I put it into the student's folder, and then if there's something specific I want to remember for that student, I just pop it on the front of the folder on a post-it. Simple as that. Another option is to use something like Docs, Google Docs, or Word, and to use that to plan. This is similar to using a notebook. However, you'll be able to jump to parts of it, you'll be able to search for things, you'll be able to copy and paste things that apply to multiple students. And then you have things like Excel if you prefer if you're a very concise person, and this is, as I say, what I use for my group workshops, so it works great for that. If you're someone who can say something in a few words and you'll remember what you mean and what you were planning to do for that, Excel can work great. Carrie, yes, Google Drive is fantastic. It is so handy to be able to look stuff up, and even, sitting out in the garden with your phone and you just happen to think of something and then you write it down, yeah? So that's great. Then we have things like Tanara, My Music Staff, Musico, and many others. So there are tools that are specifically designed for lesson planning or for assignments that you can use. Now, the lesson notes function in My Music Staff, I know some people use that. I personally find it too inflexible for real lesson planning and for assignment notes, just in terms of how its appearance and stuff, and I think it might be something they're looking to improve, so hopefully they will do that, because I love My Music Staff for many other things, scheduling, calendars, all of that stuff, and student details and waiting lists and all of the things that they do, but their lesson notes for me are just not robust enough. Then there's Musico, which I've heard about from several teachers recently and looked into myself. So that's a platform similar to Tanara, if you are familiar with Tanara, but it's a little bit of a different structure. My impressions of it from testing it out just a little bit is that it would be really useful for a group situation. And I've actually seen reviews from band teachers in the US using it. So I think it could be great for that, or for adult students in particular. It's very much structured around you give a lesson and the student is receiving it for each assignment, if that makes any sense. So it's like you're doling out content and they are absorbing it, and it wouldn't work for me based on the format of it. But I do like it, and I think it's a very good option. Beautiful interface, all of that stuff, if it might suit your students. I've been resistant to any kind of online platform like this for a while, some of you will know, and I know, because I know the advantage of it, and I know the drawbacks for me. The drawbacks have been, the student has to have a device, and most of my students don't have their own device, so they're borrowing it from someone. So they're going to have that to practice. They're going to have to get that from mum or dad or brother or sister, go to the piano with it. So that's an extra impediment to practicing, as far as I say it. And parents don't necessarily want extra screen time, so that's another factor for me. This is totally based on culture and community, I think, but that's the vibe from parents with me. And so I've been really hesitant to put something like this into place. You can let me know if you have the same concerns, or if you're using a system like this. I would love to hear from you. I have decided to try Tanara this year. partially I'm doing this so that I can report back to all of you. I do consider myself a bit of a guinea pig, and so I'm testing out Tanara with my own students. I'm really giving it a go so that I can report back in a year and we can see what difference it makes. Yeah, Carrie, you agree with me. More screen time, right? However, I am going to use Tanara. I'm also going to continue my old system. This is partially based on that. Going back to in-person things needing to be available more digitally anyway. And so I'm going to use the two side by side this year. That's what I've decided on. And hopefully we're not going to expand the teacher planning time too much by streamlining a few things there. So I'll report back on that as I continue to streamline it. But that's what I'm thinking, and that's what I'm doing at the moment. I'm moving forward with Tanara. The reason I've decided to move forward with it is, despite the screen time issue, is because I can see the benefits of it. I can see how it would mean more students access the listening tracks and easily access the reminder videos, especially for those parents who are a bit more hands off. So I want to experiment with it for that. For the parents who don't always organise the listening tracks and students don't always have their assignment sheets, are they more likely, those parents, to give their student a device, their child a device, and have them use it during their practice time? If I can get across to them that their child will be more effective with their practice, I would prefer to have the parents sit there and really participate in the practice and really get involved. But for the parents who aren't, I'm hoping that they will be more likely to do this, and that will structure their child's practice time that little bit more and give them access to the resources, the notes, everything that they need. It also means that they can send me recordings, or the other teachers in my studio recordings of their practice. We'll see how much they do that. I'm not sure yet. I'm not focusing on the whole leaderboard, gamification, that side of gamification, the kind that's like a video game rather than the kind that I do, which is like a physical game that you play. I'm not focusing on that. I don't really care how many minutes my students practice. I'm not after minutes. And so that is another reason why I was resistant to try Tanara. But after diving into several of these different applications, even though Tanara is very much leaning that way, the other resources they provide and the structure of the setup from the teacher's perspective is the best fit for me. So that's what I'm going forward with. And we'll see how it goes. Like I say, I'm a bit of a guinea pig, and my students are too. They know that, so we'll experiment with it. The other thing we are going to be doing is using Tanara in the studio, for little bits of independent work that they do, like when we have multiple students together and stuff. So most of our together time we spend unheadphoned, really collaborating with each other, but for small portions of it we might use that, and we can also use it during their solo time so that they become really comfortable with it. So I will be using it as a way for them to navigate things and watch things, and one-stop shop in the studio for accessing resources, videos they need to watch, recordings to listen to, right? I'm going to be getting them to do that themselves rather than me queuing it up and playing it for them on the iPad. I have a second iPad, so on the spare one, the slightly dodgy one, so that they're comfortable with it, so that that's not a barrier either. So we'll see how it goes. Yeah, Adrienne. Yeah, they do have to log out and in with Tanara, which is really annoying. This is something a lot of teachers seem to be reporting to them as like, you need to fix this, guys. So I know it is on their list. I hope that they get to it soon, to have family accounts like we have in Piano Maestro, if you've ever used that app, where you just log into the family account and then you have sub-students under that, like children under the adult, and so they have one account and they just click on their name and kids can do it easily. I hope we can do that. I will at least be getting them to log in themselves in the studio and change their own password so that we can make it all the same across the studio, and it'll give them that little bit more experience with the app and their first introduction to it in the studio. So that's my plan. is we'll look up the password, change it in the studio, and that'll give them their first taste of the app, and they will be able to log in themselves. I'm not really expecting my youngest students to use this though, so most of the students will be able to navigate pretty okay. And I'll make some extra tutorial videos for them too as we go through the year. Yeah, so we'll see how that goes. But those are the main tools that I see as being applicable to lesson planning. In terms of the actual process then for me, so I've talked about this many times, and we actually have a previous video where I do this on screen. I assign in advance, that's what I call it, which means I make the assignment sheets before the lesson. That is the main component of my lesson planning, is me going through each student's assignment, duplicating last week's assignment sheet, changing, making new notes, changing, putting in new assignments, getting rid of ones that I think they're going to be finished with that week. And it's all an estimate, but that's part of the magic of it, is that you learn by estimating how far your student is going to get. You learn how they're moving through stuff and where the hiccups are and where the problems are. Teachers always come back to me with this and say, yeah, but I don't know if a student is going to practice that week or not. But you do though. With most students, most weeks, they do roughly the same thing. Whether that is very little practice or a lot, they're pretty consistent. That's the truth. And you can try to improve that, that's a separate conversation. But for most students, they progress fairly predictably, from my perspective anyway. And yes, sometimes I do have to adjust things in the lesson and I just cross them off, or in the digital world, I just edit it, right? So I learn a lot from that, and I believe you will too if you start laying out the assignment sheets in advance of the lesson. And yes, that is not a full lesson planning process. It's not a minute by minute what I'm going to do, and everything we do in the lesson is not an assignment, so that doesn't cover everything. But it is enough for me to think through, okay, they're going to get to this, they're going to get to that, and that combined with a few post-it notes to myself of, oh, if we're doing that, we should do this first, is enough for me at my stage of teaching. If you're closer to the beginning of teaching, or just to the beginning of planning, let's be honest, then I think the time estimate way, although it's going to be more time consuming in terms of your planning, I believe it's a great way to go. So that's how I do it. You can do pure lesson planning, but I do assigning in advance, as I call it. Alice, could you share with us what your long-term planning sheets look like? 6-month, year plan. Yeah. So I put that up because that's what I was about to get to next. So the less frequent planning. What about that? Well, for me, my less frequent planning, the main components are, in terms of actual documents I put together, are parent reports and student goal setting. So let's start with student goal setting. That is a sheet, by the way, should have said, if you're assigning in advance, if you're doing student goal setting, if you're doing parent progress reports, as we're about to talk about, you can find templates for all of these inside the VMT library. So if you're a member, you just go to the printable library and you can do a search there, or you can filter to practice, and that will show you the assignment sheets that we have there. There's ones where you can just fill it in Adobe Reader, which is free. So it's just an editable PDF where you can fill in the form. Or there's a Google Doc one as well that you can use, so depending on your system. Then we have a parent progress report doc, which you can use as a template, and the goal setting sheets, which again are PDFs. So all of those are easily accessible and totally free to use. You don't need any special software for that. So the student goal setting sheet, which I use, is in the library, and we do that at the last lesson of every year. And sometimes we do a mid-year goal setting, but that's kind of based on each student. So there is a template for that too. I do it with every student though at the end of the year. So our last lesson of last year, we went through this goal setting process. It's very simple, it's a very kid-friendly way to do it. It's just like, what do you like about piano lessons? What could be better? And then 3 goals by the end of next semester. So I explained to them that means about Christmas time. And then 3 goals by the end of next year. And they can normally say, this time next year, okay, I'm going to be this age. What do I want to have achieved in piano? And then also I asked them this time for any big pieces that they wanted to learn. Because not all students have them, but some have seen a piece, even young students. Some have, and they can sing a bit of it for me, or they remember what it was called, or they remember where they saw it. And yeah, sometimes it's for Elise, but sometimes it's something really fun and cool. And I encourage them that even if they think they can't learn it for years, that we still want to put it on there, because we want these big audacious goals too, right? So that is my student goal setting process. Carrie just said she used the goal setting sheet for the first time over the summer. That's awesome, Carrie. The other component of this is the parent reports, because we really have 2 customers we need to please, right? We have the parents as well. And so I do parent progress updates 2 or 3 times a year. Those I do in Google Docs so that we can have it all in a row. So I put the newest one on the top and the old ones are still there and they can see where we've come from. In those I include my goals for the student. So it's not student goals, it's mine. And I have primary goals and secondary goals. So what do I want them to get done this semester? 3 primary, 3 secondary. And then I have just a few bullet points. I've started doing those by topic now, although I used to just do them off the top of my head. But now I do like technique, reading, rhythm, just a few comments on each of those. This is not like a school report. It's not that strict. I don't give any kind of mark or anything like that. I'm just saying, here's how this is going. Here's how this could be going better. Here's where we need your help. Really, it is written directly to the parents. So I write it as if I'm talking to them and say directly to them in those kinds of reports, if we want this to improve, we need a better bench or whatever. Like that stuff goes in there too. So yeah, so that's my basic system. Hit the like button if this is making sense, if you're following along with me and I've given you some useful tips or new ideas to try. I'm going to go through a few common mistakes, as we always do, and then we're going to get into the web reviews, okay? So, common mistakes. And let me check actually if there's questions before I do that. Oh, I love that explosive likes. Thank you all so much. Yeah. Yeah, it's something where you really need to fully buy into it, and it's one of those things, Liz and others who have these concerns, where if I believe with these things, if we show our hesitancy, so if we say we're going to try this new thing and see if it works for this semester, like I've told you guys I'm going to try it this year, that's not what I'm going to say to parents. I'm going to say to parents, we are using this new system, this is how you do it, this is why it's amazing. Like you really have to sell them on it. Without, you don't have to be cheesy like me, but you do have to sell them on it, and you do have to act as if this is how things are. Even if you're not sure if it's how things are going to be. And then if in 6 months it's just not working, then you pivot. But you do your best to do the research first and decide that it is something that could work for you. And then you just act as if it's going to. I think that's part of the trick there. One tip for you there, Liz, and others, which I didn't mention. So no one seems to look at the physical folders or the Seesaw app. One tip for you is to train parents, and this is a long-term project, it's education, it's something we need to train parents to do, but to train parents that on the day of the lesson, they read the assignment with the kiddo. That's really the habit that changes everything. If you can get people into that habit, that's when they start actually referring to the notes, at least a couple of times during the week. And then you put other stuff on them that they really need to access and colouring things and stuff. But if you don't keep checking up on it and educating them as to why it's helpful, it's hard to get them to do. They're not going to do it of their own volition, I guess is what I'm saying. Okay, what are these common mistakes then? What are the mistakes with planning? Let me know what mistakes you've made. What have you done that you think, oh, that was a terrible idea? That did not go well. And I learned nothing. No, even if you learned something, tell me some of your common mistakes. The first one that I see is that people think that because they didn't follow the entire plan, that it was worth nothing. And they get disheartened by it. Because they didn't follow the minute by minute plan. And they didn't do everything on their list. And they think, oh, right? Have you ever thought that? I know I have, but actually I learned a lot from it. So I truly believe that if you do the planning, you learn through the process, and that it is worth it even if you throw the whole thing out the window. You still learn something. The second mistake is related, and that is winging it, which I've not seen anyone do this yet in the comments. Winging it and insisting that it's better that way. Does anyone want to tell me that's true? This is honestly a bit of a pet peeve of mine, because I do get where it comes from, and I probably would have been on your side 10, 12 years ago, something like that. I would have been on your side. I would have said, yeah, you just have to take it as it comes, you know. Every student is different, every situation is different. You don't know how things are going to go. You have to follow students' interests. No. Sorry, it's a cop-out. It totally is. It's just getting out of the work, honestly. And I get it. Sometimes we're so busy and we have too much to do, and sometimes we do just wing it. Sometimes still I wing it, okay? I'm not getting at you if you do this on an occasional week. But if this is your default go-to plan, please try planning instead. Honestly, you will become a better teacher. Honestly, your students will make better progress. Even if you sometimes have to throw it out the window, it will still be worth it. You will learn an enormous amount, and it's not going to work out right away on the first try. And in the beginning, it is going to take a while to plan each student. But I promise, if you keep going, keep trying to streamline, keep focusing on making things better for yourself, you can get it to a manageable scale. Most weeks it takes me about an hour to plan all of my lessons, okay? And then another 30 minutes to an hour for each of the other teachers, 2 other teachers, right? And part of that is training them, okay? So that's not all planning. That's not undoable. It is possible, honestly. And it's so worth it. You will get back satisfaction just tenfold, 20-fold, 100-fold from how far you get with your students and from how enriching your teaching is if you plan instead of winging it. Let me know if you agree with me. Feel free to fight with me in the comments. I won't get upset. I won't even get cross. But yeah, let me know if you disagree with me. It's totally fine, but that's kind of where I stand on this. Is most of the time planning is a better option, and when we say to ourselves that I can just wing it, I'll be just as good if I wing it, I like to be in the moment and be free, we're really just getting ourselves out of planning. That's what's happening there. Another mistake that people sometimes make is planning in too much detail. So I do want you to plan. I don't want you to go every single little thing. That can be useful to do once in a while to just learn something from the process. But in general, don't plan every single little detail. Do leave yourself some leeway. Don't go through nitty gritty unless you're in the very beginning stages of teaching. Because you are going to throw it out the window, and most importantly, you're going to get to next week and go, oh my god, I have to do this again. Or maybe not next week, maybe the week after that or the week after that. At some point you're going to hit your limit with that, because especially as you gain more students and get more successful, it's going to be too much. It's not going to be sustainable. So don't go in too much granular detail. And then the last mistake goes back to the start of this whole thing, which is not trying different systems. thinking that you've landed on the ultimate right way to plan lessons and sticking with it forever. Try different stuff. This year I'm trying Tanara. Maybe I'll hate it. Maybe I'll love it. I know I'll learn something. I know I will. Cindy said, when teaching beginners brass, it seems like when I plan, half of it goes out the window regularly. I do try, however, piano is different when I teach that. That's interesting, Cindy. Wonder why that is. Is it that they practice less and you still expect them to practice as much? Is it that you're less experienced teaching brass? I'm just guessing randomly, Cindy. I have no idea about your brass teaching. What do you think that is? That's interesting. Heather, back in the day I used to go with what the student was wanting to learn, and it just got us all off track. I agree, some planning is essential. Good to hear we're on the same page there. Yes, Alice, it makes the lesson so much easier, and it actually makes you more able to stay in the moment in the lessons, don't you think? If you know that you've stuff covered, you're not going to be going crazy brain and saying to yourself, oh, but we have to do this, and we haven't done scales for a while, have we? Did we do scales last week? Because you know you actually did cover that in your planning session, right? Okay, awesome stuff. Hopefully this was all useful for you guys. Let me know about more planning questions in the comments. Happy to help you. Want to remind you one more time about the webinar that is on tomorrow. So you can go to the blog to sign up for that if you're not signed up already. Don't worry, we're not finished though. We're going to do the web reviews now. So the webinar tomorrow is about reading. Come along to that. Make sure you sign up. You can open another tab right now and sign up right now as we go over to some website reviews. You ready? Let's do this. Okay. That is Tanara. That's not what we want. So much stuff going on. Right. Here we go. Here's our first website. Let's get rid of my logo. That's not part of it. So this is Flautino Music School. Welcome. This is the home page. So, first impressions are that it looks like a really slick modern website, doesn't it? It looks up to date, it looks really pretty and elegant. We're expecting it to be quite fun. Yeah, fun, a little bit quirky maybe. Is that the kind of studio you would expect? I think that's what I would expect here. I like this font for here. And I like the little bird. I think that's really elegant. I like the logo. My first thought is that we need to change this font, I'm afraid. It looks lovely, but you know what it's not? Simple and readable. And on the web, that wins. So I would actually change this to something complementary, but different. And something sans serif or serif if you insist. But not cursive, not a script like this one is. So that is the first thing I would change here. The menu up here, the actual items in it, I'm a bit confused by Flautino Music School being a menu item because I already think I'm there. So about lessons or something like that would be probably more applicable, more appropriate. Now this font, whatever about this up here, me wanting to change this, we have to change this, I'm afraid, Rosanna. You need to go with something simpler. Your cursive font should be your highlight, your special font, and then you should have a complementary one that is simpler and more for reading. I would also change the color of this to black or grey or if blue if you insist, but not a color. Then we have events, which is nice. Oh, beautiful. Okay, looking good. So I like the items that are up there. I would just change the title of that one. And I would change all these fonts. That's my main thing here. Contact. Yep. Watch that button. That's quite difficult to read and quite small. Make it bigger. Make the text white. And yeah, that was the other thing I was going to say. If you can, I would put the privacy policy in the footer rather than the head menu. What's this tiny font down here? I'm going off mic for a sec because I need to look at this. Okay, that is definitely a mistake, right? Right, Rosanna? Something funny going on there. Definitely get rid of that tiny font. Put it wherever it's supposed to be or just delete it. It says the type of lessons you provide and where they are. Maybe it was supposed to be hidden and it was for SEO purposes. If that's the case, please don't do that. Just write it on the page. But I think it's just a whoopsie. That happens a lot on websites, so no worries. Yeah, there's that tiny font again. Yeah. Okay, what's missing from the homepage? Any regulars able to tell me? It's a call to action. Call to action. Needs to be on the homepage. We need to know what we're supposed to do. At the moment I arrive here and the only thing I can click on is the menu or these social media buttons. And you don't want to send me away from your website as soon as I arrive. So these should not, they're fine where they are, but there should be a big button that tells me what to do. Yes, thank you, Lauren. Lauren guessed it. Heather. Lee, good point. That's the next thing we need to deal with. Yeah, but a big button, as Heather and Lauren have said, that's what needs to go there, telling me what to do. Contact me now. Book your lesson. Or even 2 buttons if you want to have book an event, book a lesson. That's fine, but you need to tell me where to go. Privacy policy, as I said, in the footer, which means down the bottom instead of at the top if you can. And the last thing, which Lee said there, is pictures. So while this background is fun, it doesn't really tell me anything about you, and the logo does tell me it's music, but only if I know something about music. So the visual image, the visual look of it, which is just the look of it, isn't it? is doesn't tell me anything about music. The words do, but the picture doesn't. So while the background is pretty, I would prefer a big image of you and a student smiling and having fun in a lesson. Well done on the website so far. I think it's looking fantastic, and those tweaks, especially the fonts, will make a big difference. Yes, Lee, you're right. The pictures on the other pages are great, so definitely add those onto the home page where you can. Rosanna. Now, the next one we're going to look at is Miss Allison. So Miss Allison, this is the homepage we arrive at. And I really like this. This is a completely different style, right? It's a little bit simpler, maybe. It maybe looks less cool than Flautino, but that's not what we're after in a piano school. Cool is fine, there's nothing wrong with cool, but we don't have to be. What we need to be is clear. And this is clear. We've got a picture of Miss Allison with a student here. I love that. That's great. I would maybe reconsider aligning this center. I'm not a big fan of that for long walls of text, not walls of text, long bits of text. I would consider left aligning it, even if you left align it to there. That's me being picky though. Online classes now available. Now that feels like it should be a button, doesn't it? It should be book an online class or something, rather than just a statement like that, which feels a bit like you're saying online classes are available, but I wish they weren't. Maybe that's just me, but it doesn't feel super positive, especially with the full stop at the end. That's a period for those of you in the US, the period at the end. Yeah, I'd make that a bit more dynamic, possibly a button. I like that you have a video here. And I love that it's fundamentals. That's great. And the photos here are great too. I would maybe just use a bit more of this space. I think there's a bit too much white space here, Alison. So I would consider putting something else on it. Whether you make it full width with this image or something like that, just to take up a bit more room. I would also write some more content. So I like what's up here, but I would write more down there. More about you and your lessons, even if it's a rewording of stuff that's elsewhere on the site. Then we have method. I'm not sure as a parent if I would I mean, I understand the word method as a parent, but do I really know what you mean by it? I'm not sure. So I would say, yeah, maybe reword that. Although it's okay. It's not completely opaque as a parent. I've got another video here, which is cool. Okay, I'm not going to play that because the sound will be weird, but that's great. It's great to have different types of content, and I like everything that's included here. That's awesome. And then Miss Allison is about. Allison, I would just make that say about. This is another case where we try to be clever and actually we end up being unclear. So people expect to see about in your menu when they're half asleep and they're looking at your website. Sorry to say they'll be half asleep when they're looking at your website, but they will, honestly, because people are half asleep half of the time that they're online. They're going to be going, I don't see an about. And they're not even thinking that out loud in their brain. But that's what they're hunting for because they expect to see that on a site. So I just make that about. I love this photo. I think it's awesome. Great work on that. Testimonials. I prefer to see. I don't mind having a testimonial page that is specifically that, but I like to see them elsewhere on the site in case people don't go there. People don't usually seek out a testimonial page. They might if they're specifically interested in you, but it's much more powerful to have them sprinkled throughout the site, so that's what I would do. I love that. That is just adorable. Isn't it? Oh my gosh. I love that. I love how much personality your site has, despite being simple. We need a call to action button. We need to know what to do. I would change the wording of that and I would sprinkle the testimonials throughout. And otherwise, I don't think I would change a thing. Well done. That's great work. Okay, so it's time to wrap it up already. I mean, already I've gone way over my normal time. Whoops. But I hope you were enjoying it. I certainly was. That's why I've gone on a little bit extra. And like I say, I love talking about planning. Next week, we're going to be talking about something that most people find more interesting than planning, and that is creativity. So we're going to be talking about creative skills and how we teach them in lesson, and also just being a creative teacher as a more general idea. So it's going to be a fun one. I hope you'll be able to join me back here then. It's this time next week, same time, same place, next week on the YouTube channel. Make sure to subscribe to Colourful Keys on YouTube if you haven't already, so that you get the notification. Make sure to like this video if you haven't already, so that other teachers are more likely to see it, and that YouTube knows that you think it was good and fun and interesting, because that's really important to us in terms of reaching more people and spreading the joy and the information to more people. And if you haven't signed up for the webinar, make sure to do that, because I'm hoping to see some of you back for that. That's going to be an hour later than right now, tomorrow. So you're going to be seeing me soon again if you are signed up for the webinar. In the meantime, whether I see you tomorrow or next week, I hope you have a wonderful day or week. And yeah, I'll catch you next time. Bye for now, guys.